morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told out of Voice for Radio. So today, I figured we need to do something which we haven't done yet, and we probably should have done yet. We are going to rank the tag team supporters. You see, we only ever got 6 of these. And we waited to see if we would get a few more, but they came around in the very last Sun and Moon set, Cosmic Eclipse. The Sword and Shield expansions of the Pokemon trading card game have started to be released, and they don't feature tag team supporters, so I think it's fair to say that these are the only 6 that we're ever going to have. So I figured we could have a good old cry about it, or we could rank them out. And I tell you what, this is a very difficult list to make, because they're actually really good. Though I do think in at number 6, and I do think it is the last by a little bit of a margin, we've got Misty and Lorelei. Now, Misty and Lorelei isn't a bad card per se, it's just got a rather marginal use. What you do is you search your deck for up to 3 water energy cards, reveal them, and put them into your hand. And then, of course, if you discard 5 other cards from your hand, remember the ruling we went through that cannot include the energy you just searched for, you get to use a water Pokemon's GX attack, even if you've already used a water Pokemon's GX attack. And this does lead to some redonkulous combos. Probably my favourite use for this I've seen so far is with his Lowland Sandslash GX. You see, that's got the GX attack Spiky Storm, whereby you do 100 damage to each of your opponent's Pokemon that has any damage counters on them already. And this really isn't a difficult thing to set up. Remember, we got Roxy nowadays. You discard up to 2 cards from your hand, 2 Pokemon cards, drawing 3 for each one discarded, and then we've got either Coughing or Wheezing. When discarded with Roxy, they will do 1 damage to each of your opponent's Pokemon. Or we've got the new Galarian Zigzagoon, that when you bench it will do 1 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon, so I don't think damaging Pokemon is going to be an issue. The problem is that spreading 100 damage isn't really enough. You'll get some weaker non-V, non-GX Pokemon like Mallow, but you won't get all that many. But if you can do 210, then you'll be bringing in a lot of Pokemon V and Pokemon GX. And if you get to 310, you are getting everything but the biggest and baddest Pokemon V Max. You know, a Magikarp and Wailord will go down, and the only things that are going to survive are things like Snorlax V Max. And even then, it's only with 30 HP, so just a couple more Galarian Zigzagoon and they'll go down. So what you really need to do here is try and make sure that you can use this GX attack a few times, and that's where Misty and Lorelei comes in. And this is a very long-winded way of saying that there will be awesome combos that you can pull off using Misty and Lorelei, but it's not just an out-and-out phenomenal card in every deck. It is great as a tech, and it's great in specific situations, but that's why I feel comfortable putting it in at number 6. And as a side note, right, searching free energy, that's literally just a worse version of Lady, which lets you search for 4, except they don't have to be all water, so it's only the second part of this that you're ever going to want to use. In at number 5, we've got Red and Blue. Search your deck for a Pokemon GX that evolves from one of your Pokemon, put it onto that Pokemon to evolve it, and shuffle your deck. It's alright, it's a bit of evolution. Doesn't cheat the rules though, you've got to be able to evolve it normally to use this. But if you discard 2 other cards from your hand, you search your deck for up to 2 basic energy and attach them. And again, this one ends up so low down the list, not because it's a bad card by any stretch of the imagination, but because it's just not good in enough decks. Now, if you take something like Weavile GX with this is amazing. Weavile GX is a stage 1 GX, so you can evolve it with Red and Blue, and the ability Shadow Connection lets you just move your darkness energy around the field in any way that you like. Similarly, I'm a huge fan of using this with Silvally GX to get 2 energy on that, and it's got the amazing ability that lets you draw until you've got 5 cards in hand once during your turn, and then you've got enough energy to attack with it, or you can then use it with something like Weavile. Another option here would be something like Quagsire. Doesn't let you move your water energy around the field, but it does let you move it all to your active, which isn't far away. And again, I think Red and Blue is a phenomenal card. I think it is a great card in certain specific decks, but I don't think it's good enough in a deck-to-deck basis for me to be able to put it in any higher than number 5. In at number 4, we've got Mallow and Lana, and let me start off by saying I feel bad for putting it this far down the list. I think this is a really, really good card, and I honestly feel a bit wrong putting it in at number 4. It's not that I think it's a bad card. I think 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all over-the-top phenomenal cards, and I do think they're all phenomenal. I just don't think it's as good as a 3 in front of it. But let's be 100% clear before we get further into this card. I am not saying it is bad. I am explicitly saying that it is phenomenal. I just don't think I can justify putting it any higher. Now, Mallow and Lana is a switch that lets you heal 120 from the Pokemon that you switch to the bench. It's great. We live in a format where the decks that are rocking, that are winning everything, are things like Mewtwo and Mew with 270 HP. I mean, something like the 220 HP Zacian V seems somewhat low by comparison. We've got 2 and 3 prize Pokemon running around everywhere. And this lets you heal 120 from them, which means there's a very good chance you're going to be giving up 0 prizes rather than 3. And yes, you can heal 120 with Hyper Potion, but you've got to discard 2 energy from the Pokemon, which a lot of the time you're not in a position to do so. And yes, you can heal 90 damage in all special conditions with Mixed Herbs, but you've got to play 2 at the same time in order to do so. Now, to be fair, this does just act as a switch, unless you choose to discard 2 cards from your hand, in which case you get to do the healing, but we've seen time and time again people are willing to. Mallow and Lana sees an awful lot of play at the moment, all the top 4 do, and the reason it's so gosh darned good is because it stops you giving up KOs, and in the modern format that's 2 or 3 prizes, which is 1/3 to 1/2 of the amount of prizes your opponent needs to take in order to win the game. Coming in at number 3, we've got Bellelba and Brycen-Man, and I honestly could have made an argument for this to be number 1. Bellelba and Brycen-Man is one of the most disruptive cards we've seen, at least in a very long time. There's an argument that it's ever. You see, what Bellelba and Brycen-Man does is you discard 3 cards on the top of each player's deck. And I know that's yours and your opponent's, but you're set up for doing so. When you play it, you may discard 3 other cards from your hand, and if you do, each player discards their bench Pokemon until they've only got 3 remaining. Your opponent discards first. And this can be used to hurt your opponent's bench and limit their options, but most of the time this is used for milling. And there's a million different ways we can do this. One of the things we can do is just play it with Oranguru, which basically gives us 2 different approaches. First of all, we can use Oranguru's resource management to get Bellelba and Brycen-Man back, so that we can use it again and again. And another thing is that you lose if you cannot draw a card to begin your turn. So you can use this even if it discards the last cards of your deck, and then use Oranguru's resource management to put cards back in your deck, such that you will then be able to not deck out next turn. It can be used with Lieutenant Surge's strategy in standard only, to use 2 at the same time, or it can be used in conjunction with any other milling. I mean, in Oranguru decks at the moment, it's a little bit too good. This is the main card that is making mill decks viable at the moment. And when I look at playing stuff like Excadrill, which I really want to because I love Excadrill, one of my first thoughts is, yeah, you see, the problem is this is best when you've got 3 or fewer cards remaining in your deck. Then you do 180 for a single energy. But if your opponent drops the Bellelba and Brycen-Man, you lose. In at number 2, Cynthia and Caitlin. And on the one hand, I feel like I should have put it at number 1. And on the other hand, you see, this is not a particularly exciting card. What you do is you grab a supporter card from your discard pile and put it into your hand. And if you choose to discard a card from your hand, you can also draw 3 cards. It's really not a particularly exciting card in any stretch of the imagination. But unfortunately, it is seeing the most play of any of these cards. It is absolutely phenomenal. It is a great, great card. It just sees so much play. It's not very exciting. You can, use it to stream supporters, and that's kind of fun. And you can use it to draw extra cards while streaming supporters. I mean, nobody's sitting here arguing that How is a phenomenal card that lets you draw 3. And this only does that if you discard a card from your hand. And Lucamine's kind of dropped off the face of the earth, even in Standard, and that lets you get 2 supporters or stadiums back from your discard pile rather than 1 supporter. But the key to this card is that it's not just drawing cards and it's not just getting your supporters back. It is both at the same time, and it honestly does make such a huge difference. It looks a little bit meh on the face of it, but it makes your deck so much better and so much more consistent that we really have to start taking it very, very seriously indeed. And that means by process of elimination that in at number 1 we've got Guzma and Hala. Honestly, I think you could argue any of the top 4 into the number 1 slot, but I feel good about Guzma and Hala. You see, the thing that Guzma and Hala does is it helps out any deck while also making certain decks far better to the point where they might now be viable when they weren't before. Guzma and Hala lets you search for a stadium card. Meh. But Guzma and Hala, if you discard 2 other cards from your hand, also lets you search for a Pokemon tool and a special energy. And that makes a huge difference. You see, we don't have special energy search at the moment. We just don't. This is special energy search, and it's reliable special energy search. If you're playing 1 weakness guard energy to take away your weakness, you really want to try and find it at the perfect time. Oh look, Guzma and Hala does it. But it goes the other way around as well. You see some decks that are playing Guzma and Hala for the stadium and tool, but they're playing it anyway, so they play like 1 copy of Aurora energy. Because they can search a special energy, they might as well play 1. And then we've got like fighting decks where at the same time you can search yourself a karate belt to reduce your attack cost, while also searching out a martial arts dojo to mean you do an extra 40 damage. Both of those are dependent on being behind on prizes, so play Guzma and Hala when you're behind on prizes. Sorted. I mean, you can go into Expanded and pull up a ridiculous combo, like getting a Mega Rayquaza and going, right, what do you need? Well, you need a Spirit Link, so, okay, let's go and search that. And you need free energy, well, you're an evolution, so let's grab a triple acceleration energy. And you kind of need Skyfield, so you can do 30 damage for each of your 8 bench Pokemon, rather than each of your 5 bench Pokemon. Oh, yeah, that's basically everything you need in one go. And the reason I put this up to the top is because it's good in basically any deck, unless you really don't play stadiums, tools, or special energy, and there's very few decks around that don't. But it also makes some decks ridiculously awesome. Whereas if you compare that to something like Bellelba and Brycen-Man, phenomenal in some decks. But there's an awful lot of decks out there that just cannot use it. Whereas Cynthia and Caitlyn, it's good in every single deck and it sees a huge amount of play, but actually when it really comes down to it, there's no one deck that goes, oh my god, I was not good enough, but then Cynthia and Caitlyn came out and now I am. So there we go. That's my listing of every tag team supporter, but I'd like to know your listing. Remember, you cannot just say a card should be higher. You need to tell me what you're going to drop in its place. And I would recommend doing a full list and popping it in the description or the comment section. And then I'd love you for it. Go nuts, be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. And please do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WassiePlays, where you can find out about a whole bunch of games that don't have any Pokemon in, but are pretty gosh darned awesome nonetheless. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.